Who stole the tarts?
Кто украл пироги?
Who stole the tarts? The king and queen of hearts were sitting on their throne.
Король и королева червей сидели на троне.
The king and queen of hearts were sitting on their throne. When they arrived with a great crowd around them.
Когда они прибыли, с огромной толпой вокруг них.
When they arrived with a great crowd around them. All sorts of little birds and animals, and the whole pack of cards.
Всевозможными маленькими птицами и животными и целой пачкой карт.
All sorts of little birds and animals, and the whole pack of cards. The knave was standing before them, in chains.
Валет стоял перед ними, в цепях.
The knave was standing before them, in chains. With a soldier on each side to guard him.
С солдатами по бокам, чтобы охранять его.
With a soldier on each side to guard him. And near the king was the white rabbit with a trumpet in one hand.
А рядом с королем был белый кролик с трубой в одной руке.
And near the king was the white rabbit with a trumpet in one hand. And a scroll of parchment in the other.
И пергаментным свитком в другой.
And a scroll of parchment in the other. In the middle of the court was a table.
Посреди двора стоял стол.
In the middle of the court was a table. With a large dish of tarts upon it.
С большим блюдом пирогов.
With a large dish of tarts upon it. They looked so good.
Они выглядели так хорошо.
They looked so good. That it made Alice quite hungry to look at them.
Что Алиса проголодалась, смотря на них.
That it made Alice quite hungry to look at him. I hope the trial won't take long, she thought.
Надеюсь, что судебный процесс не займет много времени, подумала она.
I hope the trial won't take long, she thought. And then they all hand round the tarts.
И тогда они раздадут пироги.
And then they all hand round the tarts. But there seemed to be no chance of this.
Но, похоже, шансов на это не было.
But there seemed to be no chance of this. So she began looking at everything about her, to pass the time.
Поэтому она начала смотреть на все вокруг, чтобы скоротать время.
So she began looking at everything about her, to pass the time. She was quite happy to find.
Она была так счастлива, осознав.
She was quite happy to find that she knew the name of nearly everything in court from the books.
Что она знает название почти всего о суде из книг.
That she knew the name of nearly everything in court from the books. That's the judge, she said to herself because of his great wig.
Это судья, сказала она себе, из-за его великого парика.
That's the judge, she said to herself because of his great wig. The judge, by the way, was the king.
Судья, кстати, был королем.
The judge, by the way, was the king. He wore his crown over the wig.
Он носил свою корону поверх парика.
He wore his crown over the wig. He did not look at all comfortable.
Он выглядел совсем некомфортно.
He did not look at all comfortable. And that's the jury box, thought Alice.
И это скамья присяжных, подумала Алиса.
And that's the jury box, thought Alice. And those 12 creatures are the jurors.
И эти 12 существ являются присяжными.
And those 12 creatures are the jurors. She said this last word 2 or 3 times over to herself.
Она сказала это последнее слово 2 или 3 раза себе.
She said this last word 2 or 3 times over to herself. Because she was proud of it.
Потому что гордилась этим.
Because she was proud of it. Not many little girls of her age know its meaning.
Немногие девочки ее возраста знают его значение.
Not many little girls of her age know its meaning. The 12 jurors were all writing very busily on slates.
Все 12 присяжных очень усердно писали на сланцах.
The 12 jurors were all writing very busily on slates. What are they doing? Alice whispered to the Griffin.
Что они делают? Прошептала Алиса Грифону.
What are they doing? Alice whispered to the Griffin. They don't have anything to put down yet.
Им пока нечего записывать.
They don't have anything to put down yet. They're writing down the names, the Griffin whispered back.
Они пишут свои имена, прошептал в ответ Грифон.
They're writing down the names, the Griffin whispered back. Or they can forget them before the end of the trial.
Или они забудут их до конца процесса.
Or they can forget them before the end of the trial. Stupid creatures, Alice began in a loud, indignant voice.
Глупые создания, начала Алиса громким возмущенным голосом.
Stupid creatures, Alice began in a loud, indignant voice. But she stopped hastily, because the white rabbit cried out.
Но она спешно остановилась, потому что белый кролик закричал.
But she stopped hastily, because the white rabbit cried out. Silence in the court.
Тишина в суде.
Silence in the court. And the king put on his spectacles and looked anxiously round.
А король надел очки и с тревогой огляделся.
And the king put on his spectacles and looked anxiously round. To make out who was talking.
Чтобы разглядеть, кто говорит.
To make out who was talking. Alice could see that all the jurors were writing down, stupid creatures.
Алиса увидела, что все присяжные записали глупые создания.
Alice could see that all the jurors were writing down, stupid creatures. On their slates, and she could even make out.
На своих сланцах, и она даже поняла.
On their slates, and she could even make out. That one of them didn't know how to spell stupid.
Что один из них не знал, как писать глупый.
That one of them didn't know how to spell stupid. And that he had to ask his neighbor to tell him.
И что ему пришлось спросить соседа подсказать ему.
And that he had to ask his neighbor to tell him. One of the jurors had a pencil that squeaked.
У одного из присяжных пискнул карандаш.
One of the jurors had a pencil that squeaked. This was too much for Alice.
Это было слишком для Алисы.
This was too much for Alice. And she went round the court and got behind him.
И она обошла весь зал и встала позади него.
And she went round the court and got behind him. And very soon found an opportunity of taking it away.
И вскоре ей удалось выхватить его.
And very soon found an opportunity of taking it away. She did it so quickly that the poor little juror.
Она сделала это так быстро, что бедный маленький присяжный.
She did it so quickly that the poor little juror. It was Bill, the lizard.
Это был Билл, ящерица.
It was Bill, the lizard. Didn't notice it.
Не заметил этого.
Didn't notice it. So, after looking for his pencil.
Поэтому, посмотрев на карандаш.
So, after looking for his pencil. He had to write with one finger for the rest of the day.
Ему пришлось писать одним пальцем до конца дня.
He had to write with one finger for the rest of the day. And this was of very little use.
И толку было мало.
And this was of very little use. Because it left no mark on the slate.
Потому что это не оставило следов на сланце.
Because it left no mark on the slate. Herald, read the accusation, said the king.
Глашатай, прочитай обвинение, сказал король.
Herald, read the accusation, said the king. The white rabbit blew 3 blasts on the trumpet.
Белый кролик дунул 3 раза в трубу.
The white rabbit blew 3 blasts on the trumpet. And then unrolled the parchment scroll, and read.
А затем развернул пергаментный свиток и прочитал.
And then unrolled the parchment scroll, and read. The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts.
Королева червей сделала несколько пирогов.
The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts. All on a summer day.
Все в летний день.
All on a summer day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts.
Валет червей украл эти пироги.
The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts. And took them all away.
И унес их прочь.
And took them all away. Think over your verdict, the king said to the jury.
Вынесите свой вердикт, сказал король присяжным.
Think over your verdict, the king said to the jury. Not yet, not yet. The rabbit hastily interrupted.
Еще нет, прервал поспешно кролик.
Not yet, not yet. The rabbit hastily interrupted. Call the first witness, said the king.
Вызовите первого свидетеля, сказал король.
Call the first witness, said the king. And the white rabbit blew 3 blasts on the trumpet, and called out.
Белый кролик подул в трубу 3 раза и крикнул.
And the white rabbit blew 3 blasts on the trumpet, and called out. First witness.
Первый свидетель.
First witness. The first witness was the hatter.
Первым свидетелем был шляпник.
The first witness was the hatter. He came in with a teacup in one hand.
Он вошел с чашкой чая в одной руке.
He came in with a teacup in one hand. And a piece of bread and butter in the other.
И куском хлеба с маслом в другой.
And a piece of bread and butter in the other. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, he began.
Извините, Ваше Величество, начал он.
I'm sorry, Your Majesty, he began. For bringing these in.
За то, что принес это.
For bringing these in. But I had no chance of finishing my tea.
Но у меня не было возможности выпить чаю.
But I had no chance of finishing my tea. When did you begin? Said the king.
Когда ты начал, сказал король.
When did you begin? Said the king. The hatter looked at the March hare.
Шляпник посмотрел на мартовского зайца.
The hatter looked at the March hare. Who was there, too, as well as the dormouse.
Который тоже был там, а также на Соню.
Who was there, too, as well as the dormouse. 14th of March, I think it was, he said.
Мне кажется, 14 марта, сказал он.
14th of March, I think it was, he said. 15th, said the March hare.
15-го, сказал мартовский заяц.
15th, said the March hare. 16th, added the dormouse.
16-го, добавил Соня.
16th, added the dormouse. Write that down, the king said to the jury.
Запишите это, сказал король присяжным.
Write that down, the king said to the jury. And the jury eagerly wrote down.
И присяжные торопливо записали.
And the jury eagerly wrote down. All 3 dates on their slates.
Все 3 даты на своих листах.
All 3 dates on their slates. And then added them up.
А затем сложили их.
And then added them up. Take off your hat, the king said to the hatter.
Сними шляпу, сказал король шляпнику.
Take off your hat, the king said to the hatter. It isn't mine, said the hatter.
Она не моя, сказал шляпник.
It isn't mine, said the Hatter. He stole it, the king exclaimed.
Он украл ее, воскликнул король.
He stole it, the king exclaimed. Turning to the jury, who immediately wrote it down.
Обратившись к присяжным, которые тут же записали это.
Turning to the jury, who immediately wrote it down. I keep them to sell, the Hatter explained.
Я выставляю их на продажу, пояснил шляпник.
I keep them to sell, the Hatter explained. I'm a hatter.
Я шляпник.
I'm a hatter. The queen put on her spectacles, and began staring at the hatter.
Королева надела очки и стала смотреть на шляпника.
The queen put on her spectacles, and began staring at the hatter. Who turned pale?
Который побледнел.
Who turned pale? Give your evidence, said the king.
Докажи, сказал король.
Give your evidence, said the king. And don't be nervous, or I'll give the order to execute you.
И не нервничай, иначе я прикажу казнить тебя.
And don't be nervous, or I'll give the order to execute you. This didn't encourage the witness at all.
Это вовсе не вдохновило свидетеля.
This didn't encourage the witness at all. He kept looking uneasily at the queen.
Он обеспокоенно смотрел на королеву.
He kept looking uneasily at the queen. And in his confusion he bit a large piece of his teacup.
И в замешательстве кусал большую чашку чая.
And in his confusion he bit a large piece of his teacup. Instead of the bread and butter.
Вместо хлеба с маслом.
Instead of the bread and butter. Just at this moment Alice felt a very curious sensation.
Как раз в этот момент Алисе пришло странное чувство.
Just at this moment Alice felt a very curious sensation. Which quite puzzled her.
Которое совершенно озадачило ее.
Which quite puzzled her. Soon she made out what it was.
Вскоре она поняла, что это было.
Soon she made out what it was. She was beginning to grow larger again.
Она снова начала расти.
She was beginning to grow larger again. Alice was going to get up and leave the court.
Алиса собиралась встать и покинуть суд.
Alice was going to get up and leave the court. But then she decided to remain where she was.
Но потом она решила остаться там, где была.
But then she decided to remain where she was. Don't squeeze so.
Не дави так.
Don't squeeze so. Said the dormouse, who was sitting next to her.
Сказал Соня, который сидел рядом с ней.
Said the dormouse, who was sitting next to her. I can hardly breathe.
Я едва могу дышать.
I can hardly breathe. I can't help it, said Alice very timidly, I'm growing.
Я ничего не могу поделать, робко сказала Алиса, я расту.
I can't help it, said Alice very timidly, I'm growing. You have no right to grow here, said the dormouse.
Ты не имеешь права расти тут, сказал Соня.
You have no right to grow here, said the dormouse. Don't talk nonsense, said Alice.
Не говори ерунды, сказала Алиса.
Don't talk nonsense, said Alice. You know you're growing too.
Ты же знаешь, что ты тоже растешь.
You know you're growing too. Yes, but I don't grow so fast, said the dormouse.
Да, но я не расту так быстро, сказал Соня.
Yes, but I don't grow so fast, said the dormouse. And he got up very sulkily.
И он мрачно встал.
And he got up very sulkily. And went to the other side of the court.
И пошел в другую сторону зала.
And went to the other side of the court. All this time the queen kept staring at the hatter.
Все это время королева продолжала разглядывать шляпника.
All this time the queen kept staring at the hatter. And just as the dormouse crossed the court.
И когда Соня пересек зал.
And just as the dormouse crossed the court. She said to one of the officers of the court.
Она сказала одному из приставов.
She said to one of the officers of the court. Bring me the list of the singers in the last concert.
Принеси мне список певцов с последнего концерта.
Bring me the list of the singers in the last concert. The hatter trembled so that he shook both his shoes off.
Шляпник так дрожал, что стряхнул обе туфли.
The hatter trembled so that he shook both his shoes off. Give your evidence, the king repeated angrily.
Докажи, сердито повторил король.
Give your evidence, the king repeated angrily. Or I'll give the order to execute you.
Или я прикажу казнить тебя.
Or I'll give the order to execute you. I'm a poor man, your majesty.
Я бедный человек, ваше величество.
I'm a poor man, your majesty. The hatter began, in a trembling voice.
Начал шляпник дрожащим голосом.
The hatter began, in a trembling voice. And with the bread and butter.
И с хлебом с маслом.
And with the bread and butter. And the twinkling of the tea.
И мерцающим чаем.
And the twinkling of the tea. The twinkling of the what? Said the king.
Мерцание чего? Сказал король.
The twinkling of the what? Said the king. It began with the tea, the hatter answered.
Началось с чая, ответил шляпник.
It began with the tea, the hatter answered. Of course twinkling begins with a T, said the king sharply. Go on.
Конечно, мерцание начинается с буквы М, сказал король резко. Продолжай.
Of course twinkling begins with a T, said the king sharply. Go on. I'm a poor man, the hatter went on.
Я бедный человек, продолжил шляпник.
I'm a poor man, the hatter went on. And most things twinkled after that.
И после этого многое мерцало.
And most things twinkled after that. Only the March hare said.
Только мартовский заяц сказал.
Only the March hare said. I didn't, the March hare interrupted hastily.
Я этого не говорил, спешно прервал мартовский заяц.
I didn't, the March hare interrupted hastily. You did, said the hatter.
Говорил, сказал шляпник.
You did, said the hatter. I deny it, said the March hare.
Я отрицаю, сказал мартовский заяц.
I deny it, said the March hare. He denies it, said the king, leave out that part.
Он отрицает, сказал король. Оставь эту часть.
He denies it, said the king, leave out that part. Well, then, the dormouse said.
Ну тогда Соня сказал.
Well, then, the dormouse said. The hatter went on, looking anxiously at the dormouse.
Шляпник продолжил, с тревогой глядя на Соню.
The hatter went on, looking anxiously at the dormouse. But the dormouse didn't deny anything, it was sleeping.
Но Соня ничего не отрицал, он спал.
But the dormouse didn't deny anything, it was sleeping. After that, continued the hatter.
После этого, продолжил шляпник.
After that, continued the hatter. I cut some more bread and butter.
Я порезал еще немного хлеба с маслом.
I cut some more bread and butter. But what did the dormouse say? One of the jury asked.
Но что сказал Соня? Спросил один из жюри.
But what did the Dormouse say? One of the jury asked. I can't remember, said the Hatter.
Я не могу вспомнить, сказал шляпник.
I can't remember, said the Hatter. You must remember, answered the king.
Ты должен вспомнить, ответил король.
You must remember, answered the king. Or I'll give the order to execute you.
Или я прикажу казнить тебя.
Or I'll give the order to execute you. The Hatter dropped his teacup and bread and butter.
Шляпник уронил свою чашку чая и хлеб с маслом.
The Hatter dropped his teacup and bread and butter. And went down on one knee.
И опустился на одно колено.
And went down on one knee. I'm a poor man, your majesty, he began.
Я бедный человек, ваше величество, начал он.
I'm a poor man, your majesty, he began. You're a very poor speaker, said the king.
Ты очень плохой оратор, сказал король.
You're a very poor speaker, said the king. Here one of the guinea pigs cheered.
Тут один из морских свинок зааплодировал.
Here one of the guinea pigs cheered. And the officers of the court suppressed him immediately.
И сотрудники суда немедленно усмирили его.
And the officers of the court suppressed him immediately. They had a large bag.
У них был большой мешок.
They had a large bag, which tied up at the mouth with strings.
Который привязывали к рту нитками.
Which tied up at the mouth with strings. Into this they put the guinea pig, head first.
В него сначала положили морскую свинку головой вперед.
Into this they put the guinea pig, head first. And then sat upon it.
А затем сели на него.
And then sat upon it. Now I know what to suppress means, thought Alice.
Теперь я знаю, что значит усмирять, подумала Алиса.
Now I know what to suppress means, thought Alice. Is it all you can say?
Это все, что ты можешь сказать.
Is it all you can say? You may go then, said the king.
Тогда можешь идти, сказал король.
You may go then, said the king. And the Hatter hurriedly left the court.
И шляпник поспешно покинул зал.
And the Hatter hurriedly left the court. Without even putting his shoes on.
Даже не надев ботинки.
Without even putting his shoes on. And take his head off outside.
И прочь ему голову на улице.
And take his head off outside. The queen added to one of the officers.
Добавила королева одному из офицеров.
The queen added to one of the officers. But the Hatter was out of sight.
Но шляпник скрылся из виду.
But the Hatter was out of sight. Before the officer could get to the door.
Прежде чем офицер дошел до двери.
Before the officer could get to the door. Call the next witness, said the king.
Позовите следующего свидетеля, сказал король.
Call the next witness, said the king. The next witness was the Duchess's cook.
Следующим свидетелем была кухарка герцогини.
The next witness was the Duchess's cook. She carried the pepper box in her hand.
Она держала в руке коробочку с перцем.
She carried the pepper box in her hand. And Alice guessed who it was.
И Алиса догадалась, кто это.
And Alice guessed who it was. Even before she got into the court.
Прежде чем она вошла в зал суда.
Even before she got into the court. Because the people near the door began sneezing all at once.
Потому что люди у двери сразу начали чихать.
Because the people near the door began sneezing all at once. Give your evidence, said the king.
Приведите ваши доказательства, сказал король.
Give your evidence, said the king. I won't, said the cook.
Не буду, сказала кухарка.
I won't, said the cook. The king looked anxiously at the white rabbit.
Король с тревогой посмотрел на белого кролика.
The king looked anxiously at the white rabbit, who said in a low voice,
Который тихо сказал.
who said in a low voice, Your Majesty must cross-examine this witness.
Ваше Величество, необходимо провести допрос этого свидетеля.
Your Majesty must cross-examine this witness. Well, then, the king said.
Ну что ж, сказал король.
Well, then, the king said. And, after folding his arms and frowning at the cook.
И, сложив руки и нахмурившись на кухарку.
And, after folding his arms and frowning at the cook. Till his eyes were nearly out of sight.
Пока его глаза почти не исчезли.
Till his eyes were nearly out of sight. He said in a deep voice.
Сказал глубоким голосом.
He said in a deep voice. What are tarts made of?
Из чего сделаны пироги?
What are tarts made of? Pepper, mostly, said the cook.
В основном перец, сказала кухарка.
Pepper, mostly, said the cook. Treacle, said a sleepy voice behind her.
Патока, сказал сонный голос позади нее.
Treacle, said a sleepy voice behind her. Behead that dormouse, the queen cried out.
Обезглавить Соню, вскрикнула королева.
Behead that dormouse, the queen cried out. Send that dormouse out of court. Suppress him.
Вывести Соню из суда, усмирите его.
Send that dormouse out of court. Suppress him. Pinch him. Off with his whiskers.
Ущипните его. Прочь ему усы.
Pinch him. Off with his whiskers. Confusion followed, and the cook disappeared.
Затем последовало замешательство, и кухарка исчезла.
Confusion followed, and the cook disappeared. Never mind, said the king, with great relief.
Неважно, сказал король с большим облегчением.
Never mind, said the king, with great relief. Call the next witness.
Пригласите следующего свидетеля.
Call the next witness. And he added in a low voice to the queen.
И он добавил тихим голосом королеве.
And he added in a low voice to the queen. Really, my dear.
Действительно, моя дорогая.
Really, my dear. You must cross-examine the next witness.
Ты должна допросить следующего свидетеля.
You must cross-examine the next witness. Alice was very curious.
Алисе было очень любопытно.
Alice was very curious. Who will be the next witness, I wonder, she thought.
Интересно, кто будет следующим свидетелем, думала она.
Who will be the next witness, I wonder, she thought. Imagine her surprise when the white rabbit read out, Alice.
Представьте ее удивление, когда белый кролик зачитал «Алиса».
Imagine her surprise when the white rabbit read out, Alice.
Вам нравится учить английский с нами? Тогда подпишитесь на наш канал, чтобы не пропустить новое видео. И не забудьте поставить лайк. До новых встреч!